Question number 5 of the PhilNITS FE afternoon portion of the exam. In this question, we are given a function called division, which receives two integer values a and b and returns the quotient of a divided by b. So we got one function called division and another function, it says here, called modulus, which receives two integer values a and b and returns the remainder of a divided by b. The procedure convert receives the value of seconds as the input argument and outputs that value in the form of hours, minutes, and seconds. You gotta take note that the input is in seconds. For example, when the procedure convert is called as convert 5450, the output is 1, 30, and 50. Here suppose that the range of input values satisfy 0 is less than or equal to input and input is less than 86,400. Okay. If we look at the program, we find here that we got the function convert and minute and hour are blanks. We gotta find the answer for those. We do have the division function, which outputs an integer as the return value. Integers, remember, are whole numbers, no fractions. And then we also have the modulus, which gives us the whole number as the return output. If we look at the answer group, I think we should be able to come up with a more or less best guess on whether one or two numbers would be the likely answers. I think in this case I chose the correct answer, which is D. And again, if you have some idea that this might be the correct answer, remember to test the idea by putting in the actual values. And in this case, if we are going with letter D, then we of course would need to check whether the output 1, 30, 50 would be what we'll get when we put those into the blanks. Okay, the other thing too that I remember doing when I was answering this question was to see what was done for second. And we can see that it was using modulus as the function to get the second. And we can see also from this that if we were to do a modulus of the input 5450 and using the 60 as the next parameter, the next argument in the function, then we should be able to arrive at 50. And please do remember that in this exam, calculators are not allowed. And of course, accessing the internet, getting hold of information on any website out there is also not allowed when taking the exam. And when I was doing this as well, I wasn't checking any websites online nor using my calculator. That's why you can see that we have to go back to something that we've learned when we were in grade school. And again, remember that if we are going to do a modulus, we would need to do a division because the modulus would give us the remainder. And therefore, if we are dividing 5450 by 60 to see if there are any remainders, the way to do that would be to come up with this form of division. I think it's called long division, and we put 5,450 here and 60 on the other side, and we go through the digits one by one from left to right. And if you're starting off first with 5, we know that 5 is less than 60, and so we need to add another digit, so that makes it 54. But 54 is still less than 60, so we need another digit. That's why we get 545. From 545, the question is, how many 60s are there in 545? And if we think about it, I think we should arrive with 9. And 9 times 60 gives us 540. And if we subtract 545 with 540, we get 5 here. And we are again asked, is 5 greater than 60? Because we want to know how many 60s are there in 5, but we know that it's still less than 60. That's why we need to add another digit, in this case 0. But in this case too, 50 is less than 60, so we need another digit. And we are already actually going to the fractions, and that's why we have a decimal point here. But just to see how we should go about doing it in case we are dealing with something that has fractions, we would add a 0 here, so that makes it 500. But over here we need to add a decimal point. Now, how many 60s are there in 500? We can come up with 8, and 8 times 60 gives us 480. That's why if we stop here and not do the rest of the other numbers after, then we'll get 90.8. However, our division function gives us as output a whole number, which is an integer. Remember this one? That's why we only get 90 when we are doing division. But for the seconds, we are not doing division only, we are doing modulus. That's why when we have done the division and we've gotten 90, we have to multiply 90 with 60 here, and then we have this part here where we do 5,450 minus 5,400. Now that gives us 50, which is the second. And from there, I think we should have an idea how to go about doing minute and hour. And for minute, we know that the answer should be 30. The question now is, which among the choices would give us 30? And I chose modulus here and then division here. And I think the reason why we can do that is because if you remember, when we were doing the division, the output is 90, right? And then what we want to know next is how we can arrive with 30. And if our modulus uses 90 and 60 as the arguments, as the input parameters, and the output is 30, then that should be the correct answer. This one already, right? Because in 90, how many 60s are there? We know that there would be 160 in 90, and the remainder when we do 90 minus 60 is 30. That's why the minute is correct in that we get 30 when we do this set of functions in this way. Now the last blank for the R, I think that 3600 is the number that would give us 1, because if we ask how many 3600s are there in 5450, we know that there will be only 1. So that gives us 1 as the answer. The thing is, how did we come up with 3600 in the first place? And the way to explain that is, if we know that we can do 60 times 60 to get 3600, one way to think about it is, if the input is 5450 in seconds and we want to convert it to hours, how do we do that? We see that we can multiply it in this way, because a minute would have 60 seconds, and that way if we divide 5450 by 60, we should get the equivalent in minutes. But what we need is the hour, so the next thing we need to do is figure out how many minutes are there in an hour. And we know that there would be 60 minutes in an hour. That's why we need to do another division, and we divide it by 60 in this way. That's why we would get the R. Now, if we use the division function in the program, that would be something like this, where we got 60 times 60, put them together, you get 3600 in this way already, similar with this one. And the output, when we divide 5450 by 3600, is 1. Okay, so again, our output should be 11350, and when we use the equations, in this case the functions, in the answer group D, it would give us the outputs that we are going for. Okay, all right.